Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Sunday, December 13th, at the Angelus for Gaudete Sunday, Pope Francis says the season of Advent is filled with a joyful sense of expectation. Fighting continues in Yemen, where government forces have launched a new assault on rebel forces, and the Archdiocese of Cardiff in Wales has been awarded a grant to continue providing food for the poor over the Christmas holiday. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo. During his Sunday Angelus, Pope Francis spoke of John the Baptist, describing him as a leader of his time who lived the expectation and joy of seeing the Messiah arrive without ever drawing attention to himself by directing it towards Christ, the true light. Christopher Wells tells us more.
For those who believe, the season of Advent is filled with a joyful sense of expectation. Addressing the faithful gathered in St. Peter's Square, Pope Francis stressed that this dimension of joy emerges even more on this day, the third Sunday of Advent. Pope Francis explained that this excitement is caused by our closeness to the Lord. The closer the Lord is to us, the more joy we feel. Turning to the Gospel of the day, Pope Francis noted that the evangelist introduces John the Baptist in a solemn way. He is the first witness of Jesus, excluding Mary and Joseph, said the Pope. He noted that John was a leader in his time, but that he did not surrender, even for an instant, to the temptation to draw attention to himself. He always oriented himself toward the one who was to come. Pope Francis went on to note that this is the first condition of Christian joy, to decentralize from ourselves, and to place Jesus at the center instead. Pope Francis noted that John the Baptist undertook a long journey to come to bear witness to Jesus. The journey of joy is not a walk in the park, continued the Pope. John left everything in his youth to put God in first place. Of course, Pope Francis said some of John the Baptist's personality traits are unique, but his witness is nonetheless paradigmatic for whoever wishes to seek the meaning of his or her life and find true joy. In particular, the Baptist is a model for those in the Church who are called to proclaim Christ to others, Pope Francis said. They are able to do so only by detaching from themselves and from worldliness, by not attracting people to themselves, but directing them towards Jesus. Finally, Pope Francis invited the faithful to join him in praying the Angelus, so as to see all of this fully realized in the Virgin Mary, who silently awaited God's word of salvation. She welcomed it. She listened to it. She conceived it. In her, God became close. This is why the Church calls Mary the cause of our joy. I'm Christopher Wells.
After the recitation of the Angelus prayer on Sunday, Pope Francis greeted the pilgrims who had gathered in St. Peter's Square for the blessing of the baby Jesus figurines for the nativity scenes people will place in their homes. The tradition started in 1969 with Pope Paul VI. Since then, each of his successors on the third Sunday of Advent have continued to bless these figurines and images that young people and their families bring to St. Peter's Square. In world news, forces loyal to Yemen's government have killed 12 fighters of the Houthi rebel group in the south of the country. Nathan Morley reports.
A brief statement released by the pro-government forces stated that military units carried out an operation against a number of Houthi-controlled sites in Halia's northern part. Several Houthi rebels were injured during the pro-government military operation, which lasted for several hours. Military vehicles and medium weapons belonging to the Houthi rebel group were seized by the pro-government forces. No information, however, was given about casualties amongst the soldiers of pro-government troops during the exchange of fire. Last year, the Iranian allied Houthi fighters launched a series of intense armed attacks on positions of the Yemeni government forces and succeeded in seizing key areas on the outskirts of Halia. The areas to the north and west of Halia have been witnessing non-stop fighting between government forces and Houthi fighters for around 4 years. Yemen has been plagued by a civil war since late 2014, when Houthi militias forced the internationally recognized government of President Abu Rabu Mansur Hadi into exile. In a separate development, Yemen's government and the Southern Transitional Council, or STC, have begun preparations for implementing military and security provisions of a long-delayed political deal signed between the two rival factions last year in Saudi Arabia. Local Yemeni military officials said that the two warring sides finally reached a consensus on ceasing hostilities and conducting troop redeployments in the country's southern provinces ahead of declaring a new power-sharing government. In 2019, Saudi Arabia persuaded the STC and the Yemeni government to hold reconciliation talks, which succeeded in reaching a deal to form a new technocratic cabinet of no more than 24 ministers. But numerous obstacles have stood in the way of implementing the deal, which excluded the Houthi rebels who are still controlling the capital Sana'a and other northern provinces of the war-torn Arab country. For Vatican News, this is Nathan Morley reporting.
In Australia, just days after bushfires threatened a World Heritage Site, thousands were bracing for floods on the subtropical east coast on Sunday, with beaches closed and the authorities urging people to sandbag their homes. With as much as 475 millimetres or 18.7 inches of rain in the previous 24 hours, the Bureau of Meteorology issued a severe weather warning for the border area between New South Wales and Queensland states, a heavily populated area that includes the Queensland state capital, Brisbane. London and Brussels have agreed to continue talks on a crucial trade deal to avoid Britain's turbulent exit from the European Union's orbit by the end of the month. Stefan Boss reports that the announcement followed difficult talks between the two sides on Sunday.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the EU's Executive Commission President Ursula von der Leyen had given negotiators a clear mandate: find a way to resolve an impasse over a trade deal by Sunday. Both sides said Friday that a no deal was now the most likely outcome. But in a surprise move, they mandated negotiators to keep talking beyond Sunday to secure a deal governing almost $1 trillion of trade a year. Von der Leyen told reporters that, in a phone call, she agreed with the British Prime Minister to go the extra mile to try to get an agreement.
Despite the fact that deadlines have been missed over and over, we both think that it is responsible at this point in time to go the extra mile. We have accordingly mandated our negotiators to continue the talks and to see whether an agreement can be reached, even at this late stage. The negotiations continue here in Brussels.
However, Prime Minister Johnson cautioned that he still fears the negotiations will end without a deal.
Look, if Ursula is optimistic, then that's great, because we want to. But as far as I can see, there are some serious and very, very difficult issues that currently separate the UK from the EU.
The dispute centres around three critical issues, such as fishing rights, which would give the EU fishing fleet access to British waters. France has been especially vocal on that topic. Other unresolved issues include government support for industry and how the deal is enforced. British Prime Minister Johnson warned that his nation must get ready to trade on World Trade Organization terms with the EU. For Vatican News, I am Stefan Boss, reporting.
Turning back to church news, a UK-based Barclays Bank is recognising the Archdiocese of Cardiff's charitable efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic. Through a charitable donation from Barclays, the Archdiocese will be able to provide £100,000 worth of food vouchers over the Christmas holiday. Joachim Teigen tells us more.
The Archdiocese of Cardiff in Wales has been awarded £100,000 by the Barclays Bank to continue its relief work over the Christmas holidays. The 100x100 UK COVID-19 Community Relief Programme was launched by the UK Bank to support local charities in their response to immediate community needs. A statement released jointly by Barclays and the Archdiocese states that the Archdiocese of Cardiff is one of only 100 UK charities to be awarded under the programme directed at communities suffering lack of food as a direct result of COVID-19. The UK is one of the European countries most severely affected by the pandemic, with almost 1,800,000 cases and more than 63,000 deaths. Barclays chairman Nigel Higgins explained that the programme is a response to a crisis which has created an unprecedented social and economic impact in the UK, with many experiencing greater hardship. Higgins also expressed the hope that the bank, together with the charities, may support their local communities through the crisis. He praised the efforts of the Archdiocese of Cardiff, saying that they have been playing a vital role in the UK's response to the pandemic, ensuring urgent help reaches those most in need of support. Archbishop George Stack of Cardiff responded to the award, saying, "We can all agree that no one should suffer from food poverty at any time, perhaps especially during this season of plenty, as the advertisers remind us. We in the Archdiocese of Cardiff are only too well aware that this Christmas is going to be a particularly difficult time for many families this year. In this regard, it is our privilege to be able to support those in need, with the generous help provided by Barclays and our many other supporters." The Archbishop also praised the efforts of all the unsung heroes who give of their time to voluntarily help others in need, calling their response to the pandemic heroic. This is Joachim Teigen.
What does it take to be a good preacher? That's what US online and cable TV program Sunday to Sunday aims to find out. The Emmy Award-winning series identifies gifted preachers who pass along their ideas about the preaching ministry. The program was created and hosted by Father Mike Russo, retired professor of communication studies at St. Mary's College of California. He spoke to Lydia O'Kane about how the series came about and his reaction to winning an Emmy Award earlier this year.
I think that people have a rather simplistic view of the work of a priest. They tend to see it as quite an easy life. You know, they've got a roof over their heads, they've got God on their side, they just see them sort of perhaps wandering around, doing a little bit of chatting, and most of the time their image of them is when they're fronting the service and, you know, holding mass and things like that. So, you know, I wanted to show that it was much more than that. And also to show that priests are human beings, they have feelings, they're not removed from the day-to-day anxieties and the stresses of life. I wanted to show it, if you like, warts and all in that sense, and show that, you know, behind the collar there's a human being with his own feelings and worries.
Michael, you're quoted as saying that making documentaries is an immensely privileged thing. Could you expand on that?
Yes, because I think, you know, what you do, you enter into a complete stranger's life. There'll be times when he might not want me to be there because it might expose something to him. And I said, but as a filmmaker, that's when I will want to be there. In the film, for instance, there's a scene of Father Paul giving the last rites to Mary Cunningham. And I cannot tell you how privileged that was to be in that room at that particular time.
That was Father Mike Russo speaking there to Lydia O'Kane. And finally, today, December 13th, is the 51st anniversary of Pope Francis's priestly ordination. We invite you to join us in offering our best wishes and prayers for our Holy Father's priestly ministry. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Vatican World News. For more on these and other stories, and to hear this broadcast as a podcast, please be sure to visit our web portal at www.vaticannews.va. You can also catch the latest updates on our Facebook page or on Twitter. Many thanks go to Gustavo Messina in studio. In the Vatican, I'm Francesca Merlo.